what better place to show you a Jeep but out in the middle of nowhere. So this is a GenRide Elite chassis. We got Curry axles front and rear. Of course, we got unlocking hubs. This Jeep has the made for rock air system, so you can inflate all four of these 40s. I'm gonna say in less than 5 minutes. I did a video on it. We got GenRide aluminum armor. We have a full skid on this. Let's see if we can see that. One thing I'm gonna say, I remembered one of the other reasons it was here. The plastic ARB lines were run above the skid plate and they melted even though they were far away from the exhaust, and that just tells you how hot these things can get. So make sure you wrap those pipes and insulate everything that you can with thermal tape, or just run them away from the heat. Sometimes you have no choice. You can see the results of the California fire. California is just over that plateau, or beyond that plateau you see down there. Here we are cruising along in what I do believe is the first LT 8-speed fully integrated into a swap that was ever done. We did this build, I'm going to say about 3 years ago. This build has tap shift, cruise control, Atlas, you know, everything that you would expect to work works. The customer brought this Jeep by not because he was having any particular problem. Well, he was having one problem, and that was the battery was going dead. He thought he had a draw. But basically, he lives in town, and I told him bring it by periodically, and when updates are available, which they often are, because this is a 2015 powertrain. And as most of you know, the 2015 powertrains went through some teething issues at the beginning, especially the transmission. But the engines had a couple of snags too. They had some AFM problems, that's active fuel management. I think they were bending some push rods, things like that. So he brought it by and haven't done anything to it. It's running great. I'll pull the tune out and see if GM has any updates for it, but this 8L90, after we updated it and he's driven it, and that's an important point, you have to drive these things to get them to learn the weight of the vehicle and the torque management and all that, and then they just shift like a dream, and this one is. This vehicle did run at King of the Hammers. He's run it up at Sandy Valley, Hurricane. It's been all over the place. So we'll probably do a little bit of software updating if anything is available. As far as his draw goes, guess what? He was running the AGM batteries. And guys, I'm just going to make a blanket statement at this point. If you are running an AGM battery, regardless of manufacturer, and it is really hot out in your area or really cold out, we're just not going to recommend it at this point. I think the manufacturers, as they move into the AGM batteries and design the vehicles to be compatible with the AGM batteries, then things will get a little bit easier. But right now what we're finding is the low internal resistance of the AGM batteries can be interpreted by the TAC, or the throttle actuator control system, as a weak or poor ground, and then it reacts to it. So we're just going to stay with the wet lead acid batteries now as a blanket recommendation. A lot of you guys are running the Optimas and Odysseys and North Stars and whatever and having no issues, and that's fine. I will say that the earlier AGM batteries, I do believe, had a different chemical makeup because we had fewer issues with those. But I'm seeing problems with AGM batteries even in non-conversions, just in regular vehicles. So take that for what it's worth. I'm going to try to keep this video short. Driving some of the other conversions that are out there and superchargers and such, I just have to look back at when we did this swap and the reaction that we got. Sometimes you can be a little bit too ahead of the curve. Musicians find that out, as do some of the other artists. When we did this swap back in, I'm gonna say 2017, 2016, I don't know what year it was, but it was looked at as, especially like a lot of the guys in California, a lot of the shops, it's so complicated. It has direct injection, it has an 8-speed transmission that doesn't shift very good, it has all these extra parts that can fail, it has 4-cylinder mode, and what about this high pressure fuel pump, is that going to explode? And so they just stuck with what they knew, and that was old technology, LS3s mainly. But we wanted to push that envelope, and we did. The Hemi, obviously, the Hemi has always been a really good, and I don't talk bad about the Hemi because I think it really is a good conversion. I don't like it as much as the GM powertrain, but I am a Mopar guy at heart. I've got a lot of Mopars, and I really don't think that that's a bad conversion. I do think that the 10 speeds and the direct injection has an advantage over the Hemi, as well as the lightweight and the programming and the tuning, but that's my personal opinion. So they stuck with the LS3s, they stuck with the Hemis, but everything that comes around goes around. Now we are getting more and more demand for these LTs, even from the engine builders, from the guys that tune these things. They're finding out what monster engines these are, and they're finding out that they're now reliable. All the bugs have been worked out, and the advantages over the old generation of engines is just too significant to ignore. So I'm getting calls from these guys on a daily basis. We want to pull our LS3 out. We want to pull our Hemi out. We want to put it in an LT. And these are the very same guys, the very same shops that back when we built this Jeep had a lot of ambiguity whether or not they wanted to step up to this technology. Now, there is a lot of truth to what they say because this was a new technology. And as most of you know, MoTech has always jumped right on the bandwagon and push the envelope. So we were running into the same issues as GM. When we ran into transmission shifting issues, GM was having transmission shifting issues. When we had software issues, GM had software issues. So we were on that cutting edge. And a lot of these off-roaders are conservative or ultra-conservative and would rather run something 10 years old or wait until something comes along that has a significant enough advantage to justify making that leap in technology. And the reality is the LT is here. The LT with the 10-speed, the 8-speed, direct injection is a phenomenal powertrain. Nobody can deny that. Our competitors are trying to get into the LT game. We've been doing it for years. So I think this Jeep is a fairly good representation. Now, this is not the first LT we did. We did some 6-speed LTs, but I do believe this was the first 8-speed. So I'm very proud that this Jeep is still on the road. It's been pretty much all over the Southwest, wheeling, and I think that it is a sign that there's going to be a shift, a quantum shift in the technology of these engine conversions. We can no longer do what we did 10 years ago and try to go the easy way, try to hack and patch and do things improperly. We have to reach essentially an OE level, or we're not going to meet emission standards, we're not going to meet performance standards, economy, etc. But the good news is there's no downside. With 4-cylinder mode active, I was getting almost 18 miles to the gallon in an LT 8-speed just like this, although it did have 37-inch tires when I drove it long distance. Yet that engine still has more power than any of the standard crate LS3s. Maybe not the 525 horse LS3s, but the standard 430 horse LS3. It would take most of the Hemis, especially with the 8-speed or the 10-speed. It's not really a race. So I feel this Jeep was built a little bit ahead of its time, but its time has now come. And a lot of hot rodders and engine swappers and OE guys are just jumping in with both feet on these LTs. They can't get enough of them because of the power and the economy, and there's just so many advantages to these LTs, and this, you can say, was a precursor. Now, I will say that when we first built this JK, the transmission didn't shift properly. It had all the clunking, and when you came to a stop, it clanked, and we did not replace the transmission. GM came out with some updates for the T87. We applied them, and that fixed it. It's shifting like a dream now. We've had zero issues with the engine. We did not upgrade the AFM components. GM did have an update for the AFM components back from 14 to 16, I believe. But we have not updated this Jeep, and it's been fine. So this was a significant build with groundbreaking technology, and there were just a lot of guys out there that either did not want to accept the technology of the time or did not understand the technology at that time. And there was that transitional period where it just was better to stay with the older technology. It was proven, it had been around for a long time. But I think that ship has sailed. I think that the LT is here. and it is planted. A good argument for that would be the 5.3 L83 10-speed I shipped yesterday to a customer. His buddy has a 6-liter 6L80 LS, and like I said, they have similar power, but the way the L83 8-speed performs for such a small displacement engine, when you put it behind that 10-speed transmission, or put the 10-speed transmission behind it, it's just phenomenal. Here we are again. You know it's hard to stop me from yakking. We're out here in Red Rock, and I'm looking at all this smoke. Maybe from a fire or something. Hopefully not. I know they've had a lot of brush fires in California. Maybe this is a Nevada fire. In any event, I just want to say, I remember back in the day that when we started doing the LTs, it was 2016, early 2016, we did an L86 with a 6-speed, and it worked out really well. But I remember talking to a shop that uses my competitors' kits for their builds, and I'm completely cool with that, guys. I think there's plenty of customers out there. The JK market is huge. The JLJT market is going to be huge. I mean, we're talking over 1 million vehicles out there. 1% of that's 10,000. MoTech doesn't advertise, and we got a lot of work. So I'm more than happy to share the market with whoever. But they were telling me that this other competitor's holy grail, what they really wanted more than anything else, was to run an LT with their kit. But they just didn't have the technology, and they were experimenting and trying to get this done. And this was at a time that we had it running. We had the LTs on the road. So I think that if you go back and you look, there is a desire to run this engine. This is the holy grail of engine conversions, but the technology required, because of the path we took early on, and that was to stay pure GM, factory wiring harnesses, factory modules, and you guys are tired of hearing me say that. But that's what allowed us to support these LTs so easily, because we simply let them do what they normally do and then ran our small bridge or bidirectional interface. The way other conversion companies are doing it, that wasn't so easy. Just the direct injection alone requires these high voltage drivers inside the ECM, and that wasn't going to happen if you weren't running the right ECM. So I'm going to sign off again. Smoke's getting really thick up here. If I see something interesting, I'll let you know. Yeah, guys, apparently there's a fire in Angeles National Forest out in California. I did a lot of wheeling out there. Let's hope they get that fire out quickly. You know, I'm driving up the hump to Pahrump, but I remember this used to be such a struggle for me with my stock JK, trying to get over this hill. And I'm just sailing over this hill with this LT 8-speed like it's flat ground. It's a completely different experience. And the fact that we did this LT 3 years ago with this transmission, I think speaks a lot towards the innovation that we try to stay ahead of the curve. We were pretty much the first shop to do the Gen 4 builds with the 4-wheel drive fully integrated conversion, meaning cruise control, bump shift, power down modes, and all that. We were, as far as I know, the first Gen 5. We did Gen 5s before this one with the 6 speeds. Then of course we did the LT4, we're doing the LT5, we did the 10 speed. I could go on, but the point is rather than sit in our laurels and be happy with something that works, we want to push the envelope, and sometimes that can hurt, but at the end of the day it pays back. As long as you stay diligent and tenacious, you will get the returns. And I think that we're seeing that now with these LTs. There's just nothing else like them, and I probably drive more kinds of JKs than most guys. We got LT1s, LT4s, LT5s, L87s, L83s, a lot of stuff coming up. Stay tuned.